So thank you so much. First of all, welcome to Interspecies Conclave and Atria University. We are so thrilled to have you here with us today. I would love to start with the Rainmatter Foundation. If you could just talk a little bit about this organization, any special initiative that you've had, that would be lovely.
Sure. So the foundation's been around for about 3 years now. We started out with a focus on climate change as a broad issue, and very quickly realized that it's much more than a problem of just carbon or just temperature. It has to be dealt with in ways that people can intersect with their lived experiences. Right? People can see how it impacts them, what role they have to play. Otherwise, we're not going to get to any major changes in what we're doing. Right? For instance, our energy usage in water is very high. Our water usage in the current food systems are very high. A lot of the post-processing in the food systems is a certain way. The design of our cities, all of it intersects with climate. And we're not going to just solve this by changing the energy source or moving to EVs for mobility. So we looked at the questions deeper, and we've started chasing climate as a problem that intersects with everything that we do across the spectrum. So yeah, we've placed bets both as grants, as in investments into good solutions out there, and so on and so forth. The hope is that these solutions and these ways of thinking start to become the mainstream, because it's not good enough to have a few examples. We don't have the time for it. So that's how we're trying to hopefully tackle the climate problem as a whole.
And if you could talk about a project, a recent initiative, or
Sure.
maybe a futuristic vision.
So by and large, we don't fund projects. What we're doing is institutional funding. We are trying to change how problem solving happens directionally. For instance, one of the go-to goals is how do supply chains shorten where they can be much shorter. For instance, we've discovered that 95% of India in the villages is actually consuming 80% or more of its daily needs from elsewhere, even vegetables, even the basics. So here in Kolar, we discovered that an average panchayat consumes over 3 crores of poultry annually, right? So not only is it a huge economic loss to them, it's also coming on the back of trucks and pickup vehicles. Its health impact is well known to the community, because this is all antibiotic-fed poultry and high on hormones. So there is a loss in multiple dimensions from this, and it's not rocket science. So just surfacing this problem, surfacing this gross number, starting a dialogue with the community to take charge of their lives, to take charge of their places. Because look at it this way, if you don't own your house and I don't own my city and my village, we are not going to magically solve the climate problem unless we take ownership of our planet. And our planet is just made up of your home, my home, our village, our city, and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
So, sir, I want to understand from you, how do you think India has positioned itself in the global battle against climate change? I mean, we have all these international instruments today. We have the UN Conference of Parties, we have the Paris Agreement. So how do you think Indian government has, or do you at all think the government has justified its commitments to climate change as per these international instruments?
I think India has actually done a lot more than many other countries in the world. To start with, our per capita usage numbers were very low for energy, for coal, for anything. But I think the problem is bigger than that. I think what these treaties have laid out, the ambition the world has set for itself falls very, very short of what we need to do. Right? So I think the imagination needs to shift dramatically. It's not just what the government has done, but it's the imagination that we all have around what the economy looks like, what progress looks like, what growth looks like. Because unless that directionally changes, we can't hold just a government accountable to it, or just a treaty in COP or wherever else. It's another matter that we are so bound to this imagination that we almost ensure that these goals and targets are not ambitious enough to start with, and second, it's extremely difficult to achieve them till we are bound to the same imaginations of the past. So if our supply chains are of the length and kind that they are right now, if our idea of progress depends on adding more miles of highways across the country, across cities, I don't think we're going to tweak our way out of this, which is where our imagination is. So I don't think it's so much a government issue, but a larger imagination issue at this point.
Thank you, sir. Sir, my next question to you would be, what are your expectations from this conference? I mean, I would love to know about your key takeaways, because again, while there's one whole idea of interspecies movement that, where we want to save animals, but again, we are looking at very few set of animals which are, let's say, at the verge of extinction or endangered, and not looking necessarily into, let's say, a parasite or bacteria, which is equally important, for wildlife conservation and for the ecosystem. So, do you think this movement on the larger scale translates to help climate change?
I was actually quite pleasantly surprised to hear of this, because just the acknowledgement that all species on the planet play a role in our future, in our benefit, I think that's a huge step forward. Because in the past, we've worked with an assumption of the Homo sapiens as a pinnacle of evolution, and everything else exists for our pleasure. The fact that our benefit, our very existence is a mere byproduct of complex evolutionary processes, and so our fate is deeply interwoven, interlinked to the fate of everything else around us. I think that's a huge acknowledgement, and this is a very important conversation.
So my next question would also be the same, that how do you think interspecies movement helps in combating climate change? Because again, at the end of the day, I find it all under in one ecosystem, where the mutual attempt is to save the ecosystem. Yes.
If we use this in a reductionist way, and make it about 5 keystone species and nothing else, and it doesn't change our core attitudes toward everything in nature, no, it will not make a difference. But if we use this to actually question everything we are doing, if we start looking for more answers in biology, in circular cycles where our benefits are byproducts rather than products from the natural world, if it happens with less extraction, then this could actually change the dialogue a lot. The risk always is that we reduce it to a bunch of tools and methods, and end with that. Yeah.
Last question for you is, at Atria, we actually specialize in interdisciplinary STEM education, where via the problem-solving approach, we are teaching our students to not look into one problem from one lens, but by multidisciplinary lens. So do you think such universities or such curriculums play a role in influencing young minds for, let's say, a movement like interspecies movement, or even climate change, which is an ongoing battle? Do you think it really helps them to have this kind of a perspective very early years in their education?
I think this is again one of those changes that has been needed for a while now. I think the hyper specialization of the last few decades is partly a symptom of the problem and partly responsible for worsening it. We have operated in silos. The real world operates in a very interconnected manner. When we even use words like, our courses or curriculum or our universities being interdisciplinary, it's only a human way of looking at it. In nature, everything already is, right? I mean, physics, biology, mathematics all work together out there, right? So I think it's a great acknowledgement of reality, and I think we need much more of it. So complex problems like climate are actually bringing it to the fore. We cannot solve these problems unless we take an intersectional lens to solving them. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.